Today, we are joining you from traditional territory of many nations,
including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee,
and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to the many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people.
We would also like to acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit.
Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Bedtime Stories. My name is Jen, and my pronouns are she and her. Today we're going to read By the Light of the Harvest Moon, Too Many Pumpkins, and Pumpkin Town. So I hope everyone enjoys the books, and I'll see you at the end. By the Light of the Harvest Moon by Harriet Ziefert, illustrated by Mark Jones. The harvest moon shines tonight. Everyone is still at work on Apple Hill Farm. The corn is ripe since late summer, and the men and boys carry the last of it in burlap bags to the corn crib. Around midnight, one wary farmer crosses the road and walks slowly towards his house. He will try to sleep, though the harvest moon still shines brightly. The cows and the sheep stand very still. They stare up at the orange-yellow ball, which floats at the bottom of the sky like a big, round balloon. The animals talk to the moon, but she does not answer their low moos and high-pitched baas. The wind speaks, softly at first, then louder. Swish, swish. She delivers gusty blasts of air over the fields and farmhouse. Orange, yellow, and crimson leaves swirl and twirl and dance in the sky until a cloud of leaves settles in the pumpkin patch. When the gusts subside, leaf people emerge from the pile. First come grown-ups, then come children, and then pets. The leaf people find a clearing and begin decorating tables with maple leaf placemats, golden mums, and pumpkin centerpieces. Shh! Hurry before the children return, says a mother in a red dress. While the grown-ups prepare, the children play on a nearby hillside. They bob for apples, juggle acorns, string popcorn necklaces, and weave wreaths of gold and rust-colored leaves. The best game of all is stacking pumpkins. One boy says, "I can stack 6 pumpkins." "I can stack 10, boasts another. "Watch that it doesn't topple over," warns a child. Too late. All the pumpkins roll down, down, down the hill. "Catch them! Stop them!" the children shout. They chase the runaway pumpkins down, down, down the hill, right into the middle of a party! A dessert party! Surprise! Sing the mothers and fathers, aunts and uncles, grandmas and grandpas. A grandma gathers the children around. Today is the autumnal equinox. The hours of daylight and darkness are equal, and fall begins. Fruits, vegetables, and grains are harvested, leaves turn the color of jewels, and we get to eat pie! Everyone laughs. Then they feast on the sweetest treats from the fall harvest: pumpkin, apple, pear, and pecan pies. Under the light of the moon, a daddy raises his glass of cider and toasts the new season. When the last bite of pie is eaten, the leaf people pack everything up, join hands, and wait. Hold on, children. There is still fun to be had. The moon closes its eyes and goes to sleep, but the wind awakens from its slumber and delivers gusty blasts of air. Swish, swish. The wind blows the leaf people out of the clearing, out of the pumpkin patch, and into the crisp moonlight night. The next morning, the sun shines on Apple Hill Farm. The farmer is in his farmhouse. The cows and sheep are in the barn. The leaves are in the pumpkin patch. Everything is in its place. If you look carefully, you will know the leaf people were there. Does anybody see something that looks like people were there? I don't know. I think I see a piece of pie with the two little squirrels. They left their pie behind. The end. Too Many Pumpkins. Linda White, illustrated by Megan Lloyd. Every year at springtime, Rebecca Estelle planted just enough seeds in her garden to grow vegetables for the long winter. She planted carrots and beans, tomatoes and peas, corn and rutabagas. She grew a little bit of everything except pumpkins. Rebecca Estelle hated pumpkins. When she was a little girl, money had been scarce. For an entire month, all there had been to eat were pumpkins. Baked pumpkins, steamed pumpkins, boiled pumpkins, stewed pumpkins, mashed pumpkins, rotten pumpkins, breakfast pumpkins, lunch pumpkins, dinner pumpkins, enough pumpkins! When things finally improved and there was more money to buy food, Rebecca Estelle decided she would never eat pumpkins again, or even look at one. Never, ever. And she didn't until one autumn day, long after Rebecca Estelle's hair had turned snowy white. She was raking the leaves that fell each fall from the black walnut tree, and her cat, Esmeralda, was scattering them just as quickly. All of a sudden, the pumpkin truck passed by. Oh, she heard it coming, and she knew what it was. It rumbled by at harvest time every year. She turned her back and concentrated on picking up the last fallen leaf. She managed to ignore the truck until splat! An enormous pumpkin tumbled off the truck and smashed into slimy orange smithereens all over the edge of her yard. "Come back here and get this pumpkin," she yelled, but the driver sped away. "Well, I won't touch it," Rebecca Estelle insisted, getting her shovel from the barn. "And I won't look at it," she added as she shoveled dirt on top of the pumpkin pieces. "I won't think about that pumpkin ever again," she declared. And she didn't until spring. When Rebecca Estelle was admiring the new sprouts in her garden, she noticed Esmeralda was playing in some big green leaves growing at the edge of the yard. "How curious," she said, going over to inspect them. "I didn't plant anything there." Then Rebecca Estelle remembered the pumpkin truck and the slimy pumpkin smithereens. "Pumpkins!" she cried in disgust. "Come out of there, Esmeralda. I will not water those plants. I will not tend to them. I will ignore them, and they will die." She picked up Esmeralda and stomped inside. But a week later, when Rebecca Estelle peered out her window, she saw that the vines had grown. She trampled to the barn, got her garden tools, and went to work on the pumpkin vines. She cut and dug until not one was left growing. "There! Now there will be no pumpkins." She smiled and went back inside. But the next week, when she was weeding the garden, she noticed that the pumpkin vines had grown back. Rebecca Estelle marched inside and snapped the curtains shut. "The only thing to do is ignore them. They won't grow if I don't take care of them," she muttered. So rain or shine, all spring and summer, she never looked out the front window. She used only the back door and never even glanced toward the vines. Neither did Esmeralda. Rebecca Estelle ignored the vines so well that in time she forgot why she wasn't using the front door until one autumn day when she and Esmeralda went to rake the leaves that fell each fall from the black walnut tree in front of the house. "Pumpkins!" Rebecca Estelle shrieked. Pumpkin vines had twined under the bushes, over the bird bath, through the porch rails, and onto the rocking chair. The entire yard was a sea of plump, round pumpkins. Rebecca Estelle could no longer ignore them. She plopped down on the pumpkin nearest to her, putting her hands over her face. "Oh, what will I ever do, Esmeralda?" she cried. "How will I get rid of this many pumpkins?" She thought and she thought. Her mind went back to all the pumpkins she had eaten as a young girl, when pumpkins were the only food her family had. "Well, we can't let them stay here," she told Esmeralda. "Some people might need these pumpkins, and I suppose there are folks crazy enough to like them. We'll give them away." She marched off to get her wheelbarrow. Rebecca Estelle struggled to lift the first pumpkin, then the second, and the third. She huffed and she puffed as she wheeled the loaded wheelbarrow into the lane. "I'm too tired to deliver these heavy pumpkins now," Rebecca Estelle grumbled. She mopped her brow with her apron and wondered what to do next. "Perhaps if I make them into pies, they will be easier to deliver. Such a nuisance." So she went to work. She scooped the slimy seeds out of the pumpkins and cut away the shells. After she boiled the pumpkin meat, she mixed it with eggs, milk, sugar, flour, cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves to make rich pies. Then Rebecca Estelle made pumpkin tarts, pumpkin muffins, pumpkin cake, pumpkin bread, pumpkin pudding, pumpkin cookies, until pumpkin dishes spilled out of every cupboard drawer and cubbyhole, and the seeds were a mountain in the corner. "Well, that's the first batch," Rebecca Estelle said, dusting her floury hands. "Now to deliver them." She put the wheelbarrow outside the kitchen door, then loaded it with pumpkin treats. When it was full, she just thought of delivering all those pumpkin dishes made Rebecca Estelle tired. If only people would come get them, she said. Then she had an idea. Rebecca Estelle whirled around and hurried back into the house for a kitchen knife. "This should get people to come," Rebecca Estelle cried. She took her knife and sat in the middle of the pumpkin patch. She carved a smiling face on a nice round pumpkin, a scary snaggletooth face on a tall thin pumpkin, and boo on a short squat pumpkin. She was so busy carving pumpkins she hardly noticed how dark it was getting. When she could no longer see, she went to the shelf on the back porch and got the sack of candles she kept for emergencies. "If this doesn't get people to come here, we'll have to deliver them all ourselves," she muttered to Esmeralda. Beautiful. Look at all those pumpkin faces. Rebecca Estelle peered into the darkness. For a long time, she didn't see anything. Still, she watched. until finally she saw a light, faint at first, then brighter, and then more light bobbing through the night. "Here they come," she shouted. "Esmeralda, let's heat up some apple cider." Young and old, everyone in town came. "Rebecca Estelle, we thought you hated pumpkins," they said. "We saw your jack-o'-lanterns from the end of the road and came for a closer look." "I was hoping you would," said Rebecca Estelle. "Where did you ever find all these pumpkins?" people asked. "I came by them quite by accident," Rebecca Estelle said, smiling. "Would you like some pumpkin pie? There's plenty." She winked at Esmeralda. Everyone enjoyed the pumpkin pie and cider and had a good time. So did Rebecca Estelle. And when they were ready to go home, she made sure each carried a jack-o'-lantern, a bag of seeds for roasting, and a pumpkin treat. Rebecca Estelle gave away everything that reminded her of the pumpkins she had always hated, until all that remained was a handful of seeds. Those she tucked snugly in her pocket, where they would be safe until planting time next spring. The end. Pumpkin Town, written by Katie McKee, illustrated by Pablo Bernasconi. Jose and his family grew pumpkins. That growing began with shiny seeds, which were followed by long vines, and those vines grew every which way. The pumpkins grew every which way too, from small to fat and tall. The Jack-be-littles could be dropped into pockets. The Happy Jacks were bigger. A strong enough boy could carry just one. The Big Moons were bigger still, too large for 5 boys to roll. Come fall, Jose and his family would gather the pumpkins and collect the vines. Then 2 trucks took the fruit to faraway cities. Some were hollowed and carved, and some were saved for pies. But before the trucks took the pumpkins, Jose and his family saved a few. They needed the seeds. When it came to saving pumpkins, Jose's father always said, "Save only the best and sell the rest." So Jose and his brothers hollowed the best pumpkins and saved only the biggest, brightest seeds. They took the duller, smaller seeds to the edge of the field overlooking the town and tossed them. But one gusty, dusty October day, when Jose and his brothers took the lesser seeds to the edge of the field and flung them, the wind caught those seeds and carried them and didn't let them loose until they fell like rain down on the distant town. The seeds slipped into straw roofs and settled into flower pots and sprinkled gardens. And that seemed to be the end of it. But the next spring, rain awoke those small seeds, and plants began. More rain fell, and vines grew every which way. They wrapped around chimneys and wound through corn. At first, the townspeople liked the vines, for they were lovely and delicate. But then the vines began to climb up and down and around, growing leafy and thick. They snaked green and silent through one window and then out another. Then fruit grew and grew and grew every which way. Soon the townspeople were stepping over pumpkins and around pumpkins and under pumpkins. It was hard to walk even a block. Rooftops sagged under the weight of big moons. Fences fell, and when the wind blew, one had to dodge. Happy Jacks and Jack-be-littles falling from trees. Nothing is worse than pumpkins, groaned the townspeople. Meanwhile, Up on their mountainside, Jose and his family cut and stacked their pumpkins, saving only the best, and when they were done, they stepped back and said, "Nothing is better than pumpkins." But when Jose and his family looked down at the town, it looked odd. It seemed so green and orange. Since their field work was done, and because Jose and his brothers were curious, they walked to town the next day, where they saw more vines and pumpkins than they'd ever imagined. They remembered the gusty, dusty day that they'd scattered the seeds. It is our fault," whispered Jose. "We must do something," whispered the brothers. "We rest for now," whispered Jose. But that night, Jose and his brothers cut and stacked the pumpkins and vines. They worked as quietly as they could, but some townspeople still sneaked peeks. They marveled at how well the brothers worked. The brothers climbed up poles and twined through trees and snaked silent through one window and out another, gathering and stacking pumpkins and vines. When the townspeople awoke, they discovered a mountain of pumpkins and a hill of vines and a mound of tired brothers. While the brothers slept, the townspeople filled a wagon with hay and set 5 great watermelons between Jose and his brothers. In thanks for their aid, the wagon took the brothers back to their home, where they were laid in the glossy grass, still sleeping. When their father found them there, he asked them what they had done to deserve the great watermelons. "We just helped the townspeople with their harvest," the brothers said, which was true, and nothing more was said. Down in the town, 5 trucks came for the mountain pumpkins, and the townspeople were given a grand sum of money for all that fruit. "Ah, nothing is better than pumpkins," they said. Much of the money went towards a feast held around a bonfire made by burning the hill of vines. It was decided then that the rest of the pumpkin money would be spent to carve a statue of the 5 mysterious brothers who had made a mountain of pumpkins. It took all of the next week for the townspeople to repair their roofs and their fences, and it took all of the week for Jose and his brothers and his fathers to eat their great gifts. The melons were so sweet that Jose and his family said, "Nothing is better than watermelons." "Be careful with the seeds," Jose's father said. "Our fields grow pumpkins, not watermelons." So Jose's family filled a great bowl with seeds, and those seeds were forgotten until a day later, when the wind roused Jose's father at night. He feared that some of those watermelon seeds might be blown into their fields. By the moonlight, he carried the bowl to the edge of his field and he tossed the seeds. The wind caught those seeds and carried them and didn't let them loose until they fell like rain down on the town. The watermelon seeds slipped into straw roofs and settled into flower pots and sprinkled gardens and slid into the soil around the statue of Jose and his brothers. And that seemed to be the end of it. The end. Thanks for joining me for Bedtime Stories. I hope everyone enjoyed the books. Now hop into bed, have a great sleep, and I'll see you next week. Good night.